So quantifying it, this is the paper everybody cites, is this dairy science paper. And if you think of the price of corn in that year versus the price of corn today, that's clearly a woeful underestimate of the impact. And I think Steve Pullman's comment that seasonality costs more than PRRS for the swine industry is probably a better measure of the value of understanding seasonality. There is an impact on the male. We think that we correct that because we know discard rates during the summer are significantly higher, and depending on the stud and the sort of cooling systems you have, they double, triple, or tenfold discard rate. And think of what Dr. Ross just presented on the impact of the follicle. We're probably got impacts on the male that we aren't accounting for, on semen quality, sperm cell quality, and some semen freezing with reciprocal insemination across seasons would help address some of that. But I'm not going to talk about that. Most of the work that has been funded has been in the female, and you can come up with the list of things, and those of you in the barns know these things that you see, and you expect to see it every July, August, September, maybe June, depending on where you are, maybe into October, depending on where you are. And it happens in Canada, and it happens in Mexico. I'm talking about heat stress. It's the single most repeatable component of seasonality, but there probably are some others. USDA data on sow mortality, we'll often neglect that, but it's a big deal as well. So we've done a series of experiments going back, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, using our Brody environmental chambers. And so we put pigs in here. We create kind of gestation stalls, and we make them heat stressed or thermal neutral. And then we've put these farrowing crates in the other ones, and we can fit about 12 sows in gestation and about 6 farrowing crates. So we can farrow groups of 12 sows. Okay, and that's a long, tedious, and expensive process. But we've done some things. We collected some data on commercial farms. We created the thermoneutral pattern as well. We'll run that down between 18 and 22 degrees, a similar daily pattern. We've seen a couple different things. Week of gestation, this is respiration rate. The heat stress sows have much greater increased respiration rate. They are experiencing heat stress measured by rectal temperature as well. And so increased respiration rate is one of the fastest ways of coping with heat stress. And even though they're increasing it dramatically, they're incapable of maintaining core body temperature where they want. What are the implications of that? This is insulin and glucose. The same here is a pre-treatment, 30 days, 60, 90. There's gestation. Now these animals, in this case, all move to a thermal neutral environment. And we can see that both insulin and glucose are different depending on that gestation environment. And we're talking a matter of days and even weeks after that heat stress event. So clearly, differences, really impactful differences on those pigs. And we've presented a lot of the data like this. So in this case, we had sows that were moving from a heat-stressed chamber to a thermoneutral chamber for farrowing and then back to heat stress. This that you can think of as gestation, late gestation. This is lactation. This is post-wean. And in this case, this is rectal temperature. And here they're the same. They go up. These heat-stressed ones are incapable of maintaining their core body temperature. But even our thermoneutral sows, because of that heat associated with metabolism and milk production, we expect a full degree increase in core body temperature. All of our chamber work, because we know parity complicates this, and I told you we've got relatively small groups, all of our chamber work is done with parity 1 sows. So we take parity out of the equation. So we just wanted to quantify that effect, and so we went out to our farm, and indeed that happens in multipair sows as well. And as you'd expect, P1s have a higher increase. What about, independent of that, are there gestational effects on those baby pigs? And so we created these environments, as I talked about, and I'm going to focus on the piglets, either gestational, thermoneutral, or gestational heat stress environments. And what I'm going to break out for you is pork board funded work. So this was, until this point, USDA NEFA funded. And then pork board funded all this work with these pigs post-weaning. And so we did both barrow work and gilt work, and they were different. This is the only data I'm going to show you where they're all together. And this is weight in grams, birth at 24 hours, and then processing weight, which was usually at 24 hours. 7-day, 14-day, and 21-day. So no differences in growth rate. In this case, they were heat stressed throughout the duration of gestation, or not, and then everybody farrowed together, and this was a group of 24 litters. Okay? And they all farrowed together. The only difference between these pigs and the ones that Lance reported on, they came from these gestational environments, but went to Ames, those had Duroc sires, and because we were planning reproductive work on these, we put another maternal line on this large white landrace F1. Okay. So the Barrows then, they came from that thermoneutral environment. Half of them, of each group, was fed the NRC recommended levels of lysine, and then half of those were controlled. Half of them were bumped up with a 10% increase. And the idea was to try to compensate for these differences that we expected in the growth. With those Barrows, we saw a significant increase in feed consumption or feed disappearance. These Barrows, starting at 25 kilos, if I showed you on that, 25 kilos, they moved from a wean finish barn where they were housed at 25 pigs per pen to individual housing. Okay? And we moved 80 of them, about 40 from each gestational treatment. And whether during the grower phase or the finisher phase, we saw greater feed disappearance individually housed pigs. This is L star, A star, and B star in fresh ground pork, and so this is color. This is meat color, and it's presented here over 0, 2, 4, and 6 days, the idea being effective shelf life. So this is under a fluorescent light, and there are some differences. Ground pork sausage, not as much of a change over time. The idea here was there's differences in fatty acids, and I'll tell you the significant differences really don't matter from a practical standpoint from what we're seeing so far. This one surprised us, certainly based on what we're seeing at Iowa State. These, in this case, larger loin from the Barrows who were gestated in a heat stress environment. Okay, and there's 40 Barrows in there. There's 40 Barrows in the thermoneutral. Statistically different. These don't surprise you at all. So this is the heat stress versus the thermoneutral. The 100% lysine versus 110%, no benefit. The paline, that 6.5 grams per ton paline. Remember, this is a maternal line cross. Increased hot carcass weight, increased loin eye, increased dressing percentage, increased lean percentage. No, not a surprise at all. If we hadn't seen that, it certainly would have been a surprise. On the meat quality traits, in this case, again, a statistically significant effect, reducing, changing the color of these pigs. But 2.1 versus 2.3, and I'm sorry I forgot to get the 6-point scales. This is the 5-point. Those are value on a 6-point, but there's on color, there's a 2 and there's a 3, and we detected a difference of 2.1 versus 2.3. So while they're statistically different, we've not gotten into analyzing the variance, but not something that we're going to really get concerned about from a consumer perspective. Other pork quality measures here, we didn't see it on the loin muscle, any effects on the other color parameters. So if we look at all the carcass data, there are differences. Most of them are within acceptable parameters, or really imperceptible parameters by the consumer. The muscling difference that we saw is intriguing, and I don't know why we saw what we saw and why it differs from Iowa State. I think the Iowa State stuff would be more what we would expect. So we're trying to go back and make sure that everything there is correct. The muscle fiber typing is being done today because there's reason to expect that those could be different. And so whether they're, somebody help me out, but white fibers and red fibers and some other types of fibers, and a change of the ratio could affect both the size of the muscles, the color, but certainly the toughness. Okay? So that's all I'm going to present on the Barrows. I'm going to work the gilt stuff. In this case, they went to the same facility that the Barrows went. It's essentially a commercial wean finish barn, but they're 80 head rooms. Okay, so they're 25 head pens. And we moved the gilts into there, both treatments together in the pens. Okay, so we didn't want to confound pen with treatment. So the data I'm going to present, just acknowledge that. Okay, so from 2 to 4 months of age, I had an intern that came from the College of Worcester in Ohio, and she wanted to do some pig work, and I said, you're going to measure rectal temperatures and skin temperatures and respiration rates on these pigs twice a day, 2 days a week. And so she did. And I don't know if you've ever measured rectal temperatures on pigs in pens, but she did a lot of this, and a lot of the pigs chewing on her legs, and she was a real trooper, and we got pretty good data. And she did that with the exception of the last 3 weeks. The internship ended, and I had to have other folks go out and do that. Additionally, we put video cameras, so the gilts are in 2 rooms. We put video cameras in 1 room, and we evaluated the behavior of those pigs. And so we just went at the top of each hour and said how many of them were standing, how many of them were lying, if they were standing at the feeder or the water, or were they sitting. Okay? And then we weighed those pigs every 3 weeks. So this is not chronological. This is temperature. And so as sorry, that's just sequence. These are sorted by temperature. So from the coolest day of that trial, these pigs were born in the 1st of April, I think. So the coolest day was about 24 degrees. The hottest day was 30 degrees inside. This is a cool-celled, evaporative cool-celled barn. And so I'm going to break this one out. And I'm not going to break that one out. Rectal temperature for both treatment groups was the same. If we look at the respiration rate, pretty dramatic increase. I think these are, because I had the different people measured, I think they measured it differently, but the same between the 2 treatments. And then these skin temperatures, no difference. Okay? So the only thing that was statistically different between our 2 treatment groups for the gilts was respiration rates. And across these temperatures, these gestational thermal-neutral pigs breathed more. Okay? So they were able to maintain this constant body temperature. We didn't see the 1/3 of the degree difference in rectal temperature on these 120-some gilts. But they had to work harder to do it. When we look at what were the pigs doing, so we turned the lights on manually and off manually in this facility. And about the time that the lights would come on, the pigs would get up. They'd lay down in the middle of the day, and they'd get up again sometime before the lights would go off. Okay? And this is the 2 groups together. And it looks like there might be a difference, and there was a difference. The pigs that gestated in a thermal-neutral environment stood less. But perhaps the most interesting on the behavior thing was where were these animals standing. And we didn't record feed intake. These animals were group housed. Okay, the 2 treatments were in the same pens. But those that were gestated in a heat stress environment were far more likely to be standing at the feeder. And we would guess they were likely to eat more. And if you think of the Barrows that I showed you, their brothers, they did eat more. Okay? No difference in body weight. Now, they could have just been eating slower. But their brothers certainly ate more. I have every reason to believe they ate more. Here's our body weight differences for the gilts. This is by date, so this is in that phase, so kind of from weaning, until they were shipped. So this is even included when we started heat detection. Okay. No differences. So in the past, all of our heat stress work, we weren't geared up to look at the effects of gestational heat stress. 2, we don't have the facilities to deal with these kind of groups from a biosecurity standpoint. Once they come onto our environmental chambers, they can't go back to the farm that has farrowing rates. Okay? So we have sold all these pigs at weaning in the past. Until the Iowa State project, a lot of those went to Iowa State. This 4th group we kept in Columbia. We took them through this phase, and then they went to Virginia Tech to the Tidewater Center to be bred and farrowed. So here in Missouri, we started daily boar exposure when the oldest gilt was 149 days, so they're 144 to 149 days of age, and we heat checked them for 40 days. We only had 6 out of 123 that we detected in heat. And that was 15 minutes a day of full physical contact. Unfortunately, not a mature boar. Because of where they were, we had to use these young boars. And the boars obviously didn't work. We treated those gilts on September 28th with PG600. Those, the 117, 81 of those responded. and showed heat within 5 days, and we shipped all 123 of those to the Tidewater Center in October. Okay, so this is the response rate to PG600, not different between gestational treatment. Once they got to Virginia, they were housed, group housed, in heat checked, bred, AI to Yorkshire boars. They were limit fed through gestation. In this case, they were moved to gestation stalls after breeding. Once they moved to farrowing, a very conventional sort of farrowing crates, plastic tenderfoot floors and tri-bar under the sows. They were fed twice a day, hand-fed twice a day with the intent of ad libitum feeding. They avoided fostering except in extreme cases. And then when fostering is done, it was only done within treatments and within 24 hours of birth. The herd and the farm is PERS negative. They'll be seropositive for mycoplasma ileitis, but they've not seen clinical symptoms for a long time since before these gilts arrived. Okay. So what did they see? This is their farrowing room. No differences in gestation length, 115 days, regardless of treatment. They succeeded at maintaining the similar, through their limit feeding program, similar weight at breeding, 334 pounds. Gestation weight gain, each group gained about 100 pounds. Lactation weight loss, so this is the weight loss from the day they entered the farrowing crate until the day they were weaned. So that includes fetal weight loss as well as any body, and no difference. Okay. And what did differ, in this case, I've only got the feed intake on half of the litters. I will have the rest of them within a month. And you can imagine it's on a lot of cards, and there's one graduate student who's quite busy. But this difference, about a 7% difference, approaches statistical significance and certainly is consistent with what we've seen in these pigs elsewhere. They're eating more without any benefit from a production standpoint. They are less efficient, even though it's not the body temperature in our case, or we're not seeing the body temperature difference. And what about the reproductive performance? This is with about 3/4 of the litters born. And so this is born, total number born, not significantly different. Number born alive, not significantly different. No difference at all in stillborns or runts. A slight, but not statistically different, not statistically significant difference in pre-weaning survival. But if you look at these differences and the non-significant difference in weaning survival numerically, you put them all together, and these gestationally thermoneutral developed piglets as gilts, so this is all parity 1, wean bigger litters. Okay? And so that's really a pretty considerable difference in this case. So when we think of what we saw, and we think of how this fits into literature, the direct effect of thermal stress is beginning to be a lot better understood. There's a long way to go. There's starting to be a greater appreciation for this effect of heat stress mediated through the dam. So there are certainly hormonal differences in the dam. There's metabolic differences. There's blood flow differences, as Dr. Baumgard talked about, through skin shunting of blood to the skin, et cetera. Clearly an impact on these pigs. If we think of that, then the true cost of heat stress is clearly underestimated in all of our estimates, because we're looking at the sow. A couple of people look at the boar. Nobody is really, and we're looking at the growing pig that's not eating as much, but nobody has looked at the cost of these animals, either from the growing pig side or the reproducing pig side. And if that difference in reproduction is real and continued, we're going to see bigger effects there. So what's happening? We're going to finish this farrowing group 4. We're going to get all that data and run the full analyses. On parity 2, Shelley Rhodes at Virginia Tech is going to assess milk production and milk composition of these to see if there's any differences there. And Chris, you're going to be seeing another proposal from Missouri when the fall call comes out for looking at seasonality. And we're going to really try to characterize the endocrine profiles of these animals under heat stress during gestation. And we'd like to do it with P1s as compared to multiparous sows, and really try to quantify that and characterize it.